Good morning, everybody. It's Danielle Dietrich with some more updates on the new DBE regulations. So it's been a little less than 24 hours since they were released. And so I've been spending many hours going through them. My eyes are crossing. It's pretty small print. But I wanted to do this video today to get into a little bit more detail about the changes. There are so many changes. I think overall they're very good. But there were a lot that also didn't come out in the summary that they released. So I kind of wanted to run through some of them. And then in future videos, we're going to do a deeper dive into some of these topics because they require a lot more detail. So this kind of give you an overview because you may be interested in different topics and maybe not other topics. So this is just for information only. It doesn't necessarily apply to your business. If you have specific questions about how these regulations play into your business and your certification, or that you want to get certification, please reach out to me. I'm going to be having a lot of consultations with folks. I'm going to be offering a flat fee review of your current DBE eligibility situation. So please reach out to me. And so again, this isn't an exhaustive list. It's just some things that I thought were going to be of interest to the most people. So first, of course, which I think is number one for a lot of folks, is the personal net worth changes. Now we already know based on the earlier releases, that the personal net worth cap has been increased to $2.047 million. And that excludes qualified retirement accounts. But one thing to know, you will have to report the value of those retirement accounts still on your personal net worth statement, just as you do the value of your primary home, but that doesn't count. You're still going to have to put that in there. The personal net worth cap is going to be adjusted on a regular basis moving forward. There's a complex formula for that we don't need to get into the details of. Another big thing for a lot of folks is there's no more AASW, the ability to accumulate substantial wealth. Instead, so that whole analysis, which it had, several factors that could be looked at, instead, there's just the rebuttable presumption of economic disadvantage, and that is going to be judged by a reasonable person standard. Yep, that's it. That does mean that there's no more hard line at the $350,000 AGI, adjusted gross income. And this is the only thing that I'm really disappointed in about these new regulations, because taking away the AASW factors, well, they were very problematic. What has replaced it is potentially even more problematic. It is incredibly subjective. We're going to run into issues with certifiers. We're going to run into there's no real guidelines, like specific things to look at. And it was universally panned. All the comments to the notice of proposed rulemaking when they initially proposed this, everybody universally disliked this and said it was problematic. Both DBEs, trade associations, and the certifying agencies commented like, we want to have more guidelines because this is subjective. So there's a lot of nuances. I'm going to talk about this more in a future blog post and a future video to try to get into more of the details and thoughts about how this may affect things. Now, to switch to some more good news, the annual no change affidavit. For those of you who are certified in multiple states, this is probably a thorn in your side, calendaring and remembering this, because it is very unforgiving if you miss a deadline. So taking that into account and all the administrative time it takes, they have replaced this with a declaration of eligibility that will be filed no matter how many states you're certified on one day. So what they're going to do is they are going to take the anniversary date of your certification in the state where you originally certified, so what used to be called home state, and use that date, and that's when your DOE will be due for all of the states in which you were certified. Now that may mean, especially for like the first year or so that you are certified in a particular state, maybe you have to file one pretty quickly after um, your application was granted. Well, that's a very minor administrative headache to make up for the ease of using the same date for all of your states. I have clients that are certified in like 20 states, and this is going to be so helpful to them. Now, there's also changes to how you can show that someone is a socially and economically disadvantaged owner. And so These historically are women and folks of certain ethnic backgrounds that are set forth in the regulations. And so some of the changes that have come up have been some more explicit statements as to how someone should be treated if perhaps, there's a situation of a 45-year-old white man finds out through a DNA test that, hey, he's some percentage Black. And can he then apply for certification as a historically, socially, and economically disadvantaged individual? No, you're going to have to show that you've held yourself out as a member of that community for a long period of time, which they specifically did not define to give some, you know, wiggle room, I guess, for what that means. Also to show that you're accepted in that as a member of that community. So there are some, safeguards in place there. And they also more explicitly codify how the non-presumptive categories. So people that are LGBT, North African, Middle Eastern, disabled, folks like that who aren't presumed under these regulations to be considered disadvantaged, or anybody else for another reason, it makes more clear what they need to do and what they need to show. So there are provisions for anyone that could potentially qualify for this if you can show the factors. And we're going to do another deep dive into that in the future. For ownership, there have been some changes. There are explicitly allowing one layer of ownership above the DBE. So when you have, one corporation owning an LLC or something like that, it's just allowing for one layer above the DBE. And of course, it also has to be owned and controlled by the same socially and economic disadvantaged individuals. They also did away with what they proposed for evaluating value for ownership, a reasonable economic sense. That was universally panned as being vague and not at all helpful. So they cut that out. The rules for acquiring ownership also changed a good bit. There's a lot of things to get into, a lot of nuances. I'm going to do that in the future, but I'm talking about gifting for family businesses and those sorts of things. Another rule that did stay from the notice of proposed rulemaking, which adds some clarity for folks, is when somebody acquires their ownership via a debt instrument. So you take out a bank loan for X amount of money to purchase your ownership interest in the business. And so under the rules, you cannot qualify as a DBE unless you have paid 15% of that value from your own cash. So there's a lot of examples in the regulations, but say, $100,000 is what it costs to purchase your ownership interest in your business. You would not qualify for DBE until you had paid either $15,000 as like a down payment out of your pocket, or paid off $15,000 of a $100,000 loan, or some mixture of that. So really trying to show that you have skin in the game, cash in the game. Another great thing that I think is going to help a lot of folks, and it's going to reduce the burden for both applicant businesses and for the certifying agencies, is curative measures. So after you submit an application, they can say, hey, you got this issue. Do you want to fix it? Because if you don't, you're going to have to wait a year and reapply. So an example of where we often see that is, small businesses do their own operating agreement and there's some sort of provision in there that affects the control. They can get an attorney and get that fixed pretty easily and pretty quickly. And then they can still continue with that application cycle and they don't have to be denied and then wait a year. So that's really a very nice small change that can make a big difference. Another small change that may make a big difference is that you have to have business operations before applying. So they can't be certifying a business plan. You can't have just, filled out the paperwork to form an entity and then send in your application. You need to be able to demonstrate that you can actually do the work that you're looking to do. The control analysis also changed significantly. We're just going to hit some of the high level changes there, delve deeper later on in another video. But really, it's trying to change the focus away from before, a lot of times the certifiers were looking at, well, what does everybody else in the business that isn't the socially and economically disadvantaged individual do? Instead, they're going to really try to put the focus back on the socially and economically disadvantaged owner. Like, what do they do? Do they run the show? I mean, they use that term, runs the show. frequently. And so that's going to help. There's also getting rid of some of the license requirements, some of the nuanced things about family relationships, differences in pay, and we'll dive into that in the future. And also independence, which focuses under control, is that just because you have one or too few main customers, especially if you're in like a small rural area, that doesn't mean that you're not independent. And that's been something that's been an issue in the past. So they did add that here to help hopefully ease that confusion. Some other different things, they're trying to beef up prompt payments to make sure that the DBEs are getting paid, because that happens a lot, that the pay cycle is really slow and that's really difficult for cash flow. I don't think it has a lot of teeth, but they're trying. They're expanding the information that's going to be in the DBE directory on the state level, not as much as some folks would like, but it's a start. They did say that there's really not the infrastructure in place to do a national DBE directory as of yet. Virtual on-site visits and virtual hearings are here to stay, which I think most people are pretty happy about, especially when you have, guests going to a construction site, there's safety issues. One thing to be aware of is that they will be recording these, particularly the on-site visits. I think most of the virtual hearings have been recorded in the past. The virtual on-site visits, or even in-person on-site visits, which will be allowed, must be recorded by at least audio. And I think that this is helpful because I have seen a lot of my clients run into situations where they're like, they came to do the on-site visit. They didn't ask me anything. They were here, like, they asked me like 3 questions about what I do. And so this will show, put the certifiers in the spot where they actually have to ask questions and really dive in and give the owners the opportunity to demonstrate their ownership and control. Interstate certification is basically turning into reciprocity, which is awesome because this is a thorn in the side for so many of you. You're not going to need to submit your full application, just a few things. There's also a new process in place for decertifying when it's not your original state of certification. Your other states will be able to weigh in. We'll get into that again in a future video because it's pretty nuanced. The decertification process, so when you no longer qualify or they think you no longer qualify for certification, there's some changes to the timelines to make sure that things keep on moving so that it doesn't drag out, which is probably a good thing. There's also going to be some changes to how DBE participation is counted after a firm is decertified, and we can get into that in more detail another time. And then they are also shortening the time frame for appeals to the USDOT. For many, many years, it has been 90 days from the date you get your decision, whether that's denying your application, denying your attempt to get another NAICS code, or decertifying you. So you have 45 days instead of 90. So that's something that people are going to have to pay attention to, because 45 days can go by pretty quickly. And if you are filing an appeal and need to use an attorney, which I would recommend because it's a very particular process, you need to allow time for that attorney to get up to speed, get the materials, and really put together the best appeal for you. So that is an overview of some of the updates that I thought were going to be very interesting to many of you. And we will do deeper dives in future videos and blog posts. Again, if you'd like to talk about your specific situation, please reach out to me. You can reach me at DLDIETRICH, Potomac, like the river, law.com. You can reach me on Twitter at DLDietrich or on LinkedIn or any of those methods. Pretty easy to find on Google too. So these are very exciting, but I think it's going to have some confusion. It's going to, take some time for everyone to get used to them, but it's really a great update. Thank you and have a great day.